Hello everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast. Smartphone forensics move fast. Stay current or you may miss relevant evidence. My name is Carol Auth, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speaker is Heather Mahalik, Principal Forensic Scientist at Ocean's Edge. If during the webcast you have any questions for Heather, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface. We will be answering them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'd like to hand the presentation over to Heather.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Do I sound okay? Can everyone hear me? Excellent. Okay, so a few things. If you have questions during the webcast, you can feel free to interrupt me. I know it's hard that you can't actually raise your hand, and I can see you, but I'll do my best to look over at the chat window. I will make sure at the end during the Q&A I go through the chat window and answer every single question that I may have missed during the presentation. There are also some other presentations that I have done on my website, which will be listed here in a little bit. You can go out there and find those as well. And before I start, I actually went through the list of names, so welcome back to some of my older students. I see you have signed in, so hopefully you'll get something new out of this, and I believe you will. With this topic today, what I'm doing is essentially just talking about OS upgrades and application upgrades and how it makes our life more difficult. I was reached out to by one of the commercial vendors yesterday asking me for the top 3 trends in mobile device forensics, and this talk completely aligns with it. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. I hope to not eat up your entire hour, but it's probably going to be close. And again, I want this to be as interactive as possible, so please chime in at any point. The good news, we are getting a cert for 585. So if you take FOR 585, the Advanced Smartphone Forensics course, the GMFA is being released in 2016. I know some people are going to ask what happens if you've taken the class in the past, and I honestly don't know. I believe you are grandfathered in and you will get the discounted cert rate, but the issue is the course material that will be tested is the current course material that's out. So what you would have to do is get access to the current material. There are ways around that I will talk about here in a bit if you are a past student interested in taking the cert. And to be honest, I think you will be just fine, because how we're doing it is we're not trying to write the cert that you have to memorize every OS upgrade, because again, just like you'll learn in this webcast, it's hard to do that. It's important, but it's not the all-inclusive ways of dealing with this. The next class that I have coming up is in Munich, heading out to Germany in February. And Cindy Murphy, who is my co-author for 585, is teaching in Northern Virginia, McLean, the exact same week. So if you're in the U.S. and you want to stay here, I suggest going to Cindy's class in McLean or joining me in Germany. And then there's also SANS 2016 in Orlando, which is always a good time. My contact information, and you will have access to the slides through the SANS portal at the end of this. The best way to reach me is hmahalik@gmail.com or heather@smarterforensics.com. You'll notice that this says Hank Mahalik, and I left it like that because Rob actually went in and changed my slides at some point, which that is my alter ego. The bottom thing down there is Heather or smarterforensics.com. That is my website. If you are a past 585 student, you can actually go into my website and get access to updates. So if you took the class before iOS 9 was released, you could go in and find the cheat sheets that you could insert into your course material to make sure you're not missing any relevant evidence. Not everyone gets access to this. You must be a 585 student because you're essentially buying that password with the course. So it's your way of not having to take the class every single year to keep up. A little bit about me. Like Carol said, I work for Ocean's Edge. That's what I do in my real life. I am a SANS senior instructor in my side job life. I have been doing forensics for a little over 13 years now. I co-author 585, which is the advanced smartphone class, as well as the 518 class with Sarah Edwards, the Mac forensics class. I also wrote practical mobile forensics with Rohit Tama, and Satish, Rohit, and I are currently working on a second edition that will be released in 2016 at some point. So we are updating the material. I promised myself I would never do that, and here I am actually doing that. I'm all over social media. You'll find me. One thing that SANS always asks is to try to make us a little more human. So in my real life, I am a mom, I have a dog, I have a horse, and I love wine. Since this is 9 a.m. Eastern, I'm actually not drinking wine right now. For those of you who have seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, this is honestly how I feel half the time with trying to keep up. It's like you're literally sitting there saying Bueller, Bueller, Bueller. So these upgrades change the game of smartphone forensics. The first thing you need to know is it is impossible for your commercial forensic tool vendor to keep up. They are not going to be able to keep up with all the OS upgrades in addition to all the application upgrades. So it is your job to understand the different operating systems, where to find key evidence, and how to handle data that is not parsed by the tool. So what does this mean for you? Not to be harsh, but this means you have to do your job. You cannot rely on a find evidence button. You also have to understand that the state of every mobile device you examine may be different. So if you examine 10 iPhones, they could all be iPhone, let's say 5S's. Some of them could be running iOS 7, some of them could be running iOS 8, some could be running 9, some could be running 9.2. The evidence will be stored in different locations across those devices. So it's your job to understand, one, where the evidence is stored, what your tool is strong and weak at, and how you're going to manually carve for this data if you need it. One of the biggest things that I cannot stress enough is your tool is not going to be perfect. You are not going to be perfect. But together, between you and the tools that you have learned to trust, and with proper guidance and training, you should be able to uncover the evidence that you need to support your investigation. The primary upgrades I'm going to discuss in this presentation, we're going to look at Android Lollipop and Marshmallow. We're also going to talk about iOS 9 and how that was a game changer. I will also mention iOS 8 as well, just in case I have some students who haven't taken the class since we talked about iOS 7. And then also we're going to look at all third-party applications, primarily on Android and iOS. We do in 585 cover other mobile devices, but these are always the two primary that people care about. And one thing I will tell you, say you only see iOS devices, you never see Android. What we cover on iOS sections relating to how to parse the evidence in third-party apps also applies to how you would handle an Android device, how you would handle a Windows phone. So it all does tie together. Starting with Lollipop. So with Lollipop, one thing they introduced was multiple user accounts, and this makes an Android look more like a Windows or a Macintosh computer, if you think about it. So each user logs in, and I could use this device, and Carol could use my device. All of our data will be stored under our user account. I will tell you, I have never looked at a phone that had multiple user accounts on it. The exception with this are tablets. A lot of people will have tablets set up for their children, or a husband and wife may share a tablet and have multiple user accounts, but it's not really common on smartphones. One thing I caution you on here is if you have an Android device running Lollipop that's active with multiple user accounts, make sure you are reporting the correct evidence for that correct user. So you are going to have to go in and manually verify the full file path in your tool to make sure it is not cross-contaminating evidence across users. With factory reset protection, this is essentially how you break the link to iCloud on your iPhone so you could sell it or turn it back into your network service provider to get new devices. This is what Android is adding now. This doesn't really affect us forensically. It just protects you as a user. With full disk encryption, this has been threatened, honestly, by these Android devices, I think, for 4 years. So the user, again, is prompted at first startup. They don't have to use full disk encryption. Has anyone in here come across an Android device that full disk encryption was enforced? Okay, so some of you are raising your hands and you've seen that. Were you able to get beyond it? If you were able to get beyond it, type it into the chat box, and I'll continue talking and I'll get back to that. So if you have full disk encryption, if you have the user's passcode, or if you can crack the passcode, you can actually get in and turn off the encryption on some devices. Now, I will tell you some devices, depending on how the encryption is actually enforced on that specific model of the phone, it may wipe the user data. So make sure you're not going in and just fumbling around in these phones if you don't know what will occur if you actually enter the password incorrectly. So if the device is encrypted and if you have the password, a logical extraction may be your best bet. So for physical, you'd have to go in and actually turn off that full disk encryption, and you may not want to do that if you're going to harm user evidence. For the smart locks, so this one is really thinking outside the box. You can set your device to automatically unlock when you're near a trusted Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or NFC. What this means is if you go to acquire a device and you're near, let's say I trust my car as my Bluetooth, or for my example here, wearables, if they're trusting their Bluetooth on their watches with their Android device, that anytime you're near both of those and the devices are unlocked, you should be able to access them and acquire them to get information. Then there's Marshmallow. So Marshmallow has now updated the fingerprint scan. The good news about fingerprint scans is these are backed up with passcodes. We know how to crack passcodes. Visual voicemail is only going to be offered by T-Mobile in Orange, France. They're finally making it look like the iPhone here. You're going to have the rotating home screen, RAM manager. So if anyone out there looks for malware on Android devices, the RAM manager is going to show you everything that's running in memory. So you can actually go in and see what is eating up your battery, what is running at certain points in time. This is awesome for us forensically to be able to go in and look at the RAM manager. A network setting reset is also going to be able to go in and enable the user to reset all of their items. This could harm us forensically. So again, you have to know how the phones function in order to know how to protect yourself and how to get your evidence. So where is the evidence? The good news with Android, these devices have not changed their location information all that much. And when I say location, I mean location of the evidence. So I'm going to give you an example of one thing that has drastically changed. Other than that, it's been pretty standard. Getting to the evidence may be harder because of encryption and mobile device security mechanisms that the user can install on their device. And acquisition is getting to be more and more difficult and more expensive due to encryption issues. Now, in my book, Practical Mobile Forensics, we tried to, in the first edition, keep everything as open source and free as possible. In the second edition, we're adding in commercial tools. So we're trying to be realistic that not everybody is going to do things the free way. Some people in labs have a lot of money and a lot of tools, so we try to give you both options that are updated in the second edition. What you will find, though, is in order to do things free, usually the Android device has to be rooted. If you root an Android device on specific models, you could overwrite the data partition during root. You could also brick your device. I have the Edge 6S, and I had the T-Mobile version, the exact version that was supported with the root. And when I flashed my ROM, I actually bricked my device. I was able to recover it thanks to some students I just recently had in my Chantilly class. I had a detective in there who repaired it for me using an octopus box. But just know you could harm your evidence. Thankfully for me, it was a test device, so it wasn't the end of the world, other than the fact that I spent $700 on a brick. But be careful with that. Our main evidence change. With looking at the evidence. So this is one thing right here that your forensic tools often do incorrectly, and it's not their fault. They are simply going in and looking at evidence and reporting it like, hey, look, Heather was at this location. So when we're looking at the apps, the Google Maps, we see DA destination history. The date timestamp here, this is our Unix time reflecting the time I searched for that location. So if I was searching for PNC Bank Tyson's Corner, that time that's reflected there is when I searched for it, not when I went there. In 585, we teach you how to follow that cookie crumb trail to say, okay, Heather searched for PNC Bank at this specific date and time. She did not go there until this date and time. Where the tools do things incorrectly, so this is fine. If they actually reported this as a location, that's fine, but it doesn't mean I went there. I could search for locations in Germany today, and if my phone is seized tomorrow, I haven't been to Germany yet to teach the class, so it could show as if I went somewhere that I didn't just because I searched for it. This is where things go really wrong. In our same database file, we're looking at the search history. We see suggestions. The suggestions are what the phone is suggesting to you. So anytime your phone thinks for you, as soon as the smartphone brain works, that data is cached somewhere. The issue is the forensic tool cannot decipher, did the user do it or did the phone do it? That is your job. And this is one of the hardest concepts to teach in 585, but once you get it, it will change the world of investigations for you. It's going to make your life so much easier that you can actually say, you know what, the Android device did this. It suggested this, and this is how I know, versus Heather did this. And not only did Heather do this, she eventually went there, and this is where I found the evidence. What about social media tagging? So most people use social media, whether it be Facebook, Google+, Twitter, anything else that's out there, Instagram. People can tag you. You can check in. They can tag you in photos that you weren't even at. If someone tags you in a photo on Facebook, let's say right now someone in Paris tags me in one of their photos. If that device is dumped and it's associated to my name, it could look like potentially I was at a specific location if they included location information on their device. Now also consider this. If location information is included in the photo from that picture in Paris, it is now on my Facebook. So if you are lucky enough to get access to my Facebook data, and I will tell you Facebook is very, very secure. It is difficult to recover a lot of Facebook information these days, and they are moving even to a more secure path. But if you recover it and you recovered that photo, you would actually, if your tool reported it and parsed it, it would pull out location information from that photo and make it look like I was in Paris right now when I was tagged in that photo, which I'm not. I'm clearly sitting here in Philadelphia talking to you guys. So be careful with social media tagging. What you are going to have to do is, my first rule is never trust what your tool tells you about location. Use it as a triage. Say, okay, I think these locations are interesting. Now I'm going to find out what actually happened at these specific ones. When we look at the screenshot here, this is actually a good example of what was recovered for Facebook. You're not always going to get access to all of this information. I have found that I've recovered more Facebook data on Android devices than I have with iPhones. But again, it all just depends on the device. So branching into iOS 9, and one thing I will tell you, other than capabilities, location information has not changed between iOS 8 and 9. It has stayed the same. The jump from 6 to 7, there are changes, and the jumps from 7 to 8, there were location changes. So with iOS 9, we have added functionality. Your phone is getting smarter, and again, remember, anytime your phone thinks for you, items are left behind. And now it makes your life even more difficult because you have to actually say, did the user do it, or did Siri do it, or did Apple do it? It lets you undelete things, which is of interest, and obviously locations have changed. Apple is one of the worst with changing locations of files. So it makes our job harder as instructors and people who try to stay ahead of the process because we often have to track down where is the evidence now. One thing I will tell you that makes my life a lot easier is I dump my own phone all of the time. Anytime I update apps, if I do the bulk updates, anytime I update iOS versions, I dump my device again to see if any items have been added. Are there new databases? Has anything changed? So what we're looking at here, this is one of my favorite slides. Your past may haunt you. I actually talked to teenagers at the STEM Academy here in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. And I like to scare them with this because I swear teens think that anything they post out on social media, they're safe and it's not going to haunt them when they try to get jobs in their future. But this can haunt you in different ways too. So with iOS 8 and 9, there's something called a recall. What this allows you to do, let's say that I'm going to pick a random name out of here. Let's say I sent Alicia a text message with a picture in it. And Alicia sees it and she's like, you know what, I don't want this on my phone anymore. I'm going to delete it. So she deletes my text message. Well, a month later, Alicia sends me a text that says, hey, Heather, what's going on? How are you? And I respond back. As soon as communication is reestablished on that phone, if you look at details, you will actually see all of the pictures and videos that were shared back and forth between Alicia and I. If you have iPhones right now, If you go into a text message of someone you recently or always communicate with, click on details and look down at the bottom, you will actually see all your pictures that you two have sent back and forth to one another, even if you did not save that photo. So it's kind of frightening at what the phone remembers for you. What's even scarier is if you don't see it on the phone, it is still there. And that's what you're seeing here. So our SMS database, this is going to store our SMS, our MMS, and our iMessages. Within this, we have that SMS directory, and you'll see under attachments, we can actually go through and marry up all of the pictures, the videos, the screenshots to the actual message and say this was set at this specific date and time. So what you thought was gone actually isn't. And this is how you can do it. So you can actually do this for free. I will show you in the next slide that the commercial tools, Celebrate Physical Analyzer specifically, does a really good job at piecing this back together for you. But what we can see here is I'm looking at the SMS database file. You can use any SQLite database viewer tool that you want to look at this. Here you can see the message attachment join is what I'm highlighted on, and you can see there are 8 of those. If we refer back here, we should be able to find 8 different folders with attachments. When we look here, I'm looking at message ID 198, and I can see attachment ID 8. So when I go down to 198, you can see that there's actually an object there. When we switch back, we could actually go in and map out the exact file here that was attached by scrolling across our database view and getting the information here. So we can see 9855D, and then we just go in and go through our folders in here until we find that exact attachment. Now what you will see on the left-hand screen here, this is Celebrate Physical Analyzer. On the right-hand screen, that's my phone where I went into details and scrolled down. And you can see here the entire conversation of what was occurring between Kimberly and this person that she sent the message to, and then the screenshot of Lionel Richie. One thing that I want you to notice too, if we go back, if it's a PNG file, that means the user took a screenshot. If it's an MOV, it's a movie file. If it's a JPEG, it's a camera taken photograph. So it's kind of cool that we can piece all this back together. So even if the user can't see it anymore on their iPhone, we will still be able to see it by going to the SMS directory. So where is the evidence? With our call logs, and what I did here is I listed it for iOS 8 and 9. So up until iOS 8, the call logs were always stored in the call_history database file. Our forensic tools knew about this. This was very, very simple. I will tell you, your forensic tools, most of them across the board, are going to be good at recovering call logs, contacts, SMS, and notes, including those of which are deleted. Now, with iOS 9.3 that's coming out, apparently the user can encrypt their notes with their fingerprint. So stay tuned. I'll probably do a webcast or something on that, what changes with iOS 9.3. I'll also do a blog, most likely on my website. So stay tuned for that one. Not really sure how that's going to affect us. But with iOS 8 and 9, now they changed the location to callhistory.storedata. So something that's of interest here. Callhistory.storedata, this is still a SQLite database file. However, your forensic tools aren't going to recognize it as a database file because it's not a SQL 3 file header. So you are going to have to go in and recover this if the tools don't do it. I will tell you, your commercial tools should have caught up now, especially since iOS 9 has not changed this. Now, when iOS 10 comes out, if there's a major change, you should expect to see a new location. Now, my question for you, if I update my phone, so let's say I have an iPhone 5S, which I just had until 2 weeks ago because I was waiting for my upgrade. Do you think you would have found files in the call history DB as well as callhistory.storedata? Absolutely. An upgrade. When you upgrade your operating system, it does not get rid of the old. It only creates the new. So you would find, if you, and you're going to see this in a screenshot coming up, you'd find calls in my call history.db as well as my call history.storedata. With Google Maps, the location has also changed. It went from history.mapsdata to geohistory.mapsdata. And again, you would find traces in both. One thing I also want to mention is if you have the Apple Watch, you will find the geohistory.mapsdata for that because the Apple Watch requires a phone that runs at least iOS 8.2 So it will store all the iOS 8 artifacts. So when we look at this, this is actually my phone. This was my 5S. You can see here when we look on the left-hand side, we can see under Maps, I have history.maps data as well as geohistory.maps data. Both of these databases store a ton of information. One thing that I caution you on, often your forensic tools will get tunnel vision. They will scan that device and say, okay, this device is running iOS 9.2. I am going to parse information for where I know 9.2 data is stored. It won't look back and think, oh, it used to run iOS 7, which is the history.maps data. So you have to manually go and look for this information. One thing I always tell the students is do a keyword search for maps and go straight into that directory and look at all the associated files, because as it's upgraded, the storage location will change. On the right-hand screen, we're seeing the same thing, but in the call history. So we have the call history database, and we have the call history.store data. And both store relevant information. With third-party apps, one thing you'll find is what was encoded or in plain text today could be encrypted tomorrow in a version release. Sometimes the developers get sloppy, and what was encrypted today is not fully encrypted tomorrow. So my advice to you is never trust what the developer says the status of the application is. Even if they say it's completely secure communications, don't trust it. Be smarter than the developer, be smarter than the app, be smarter than your tool. Go in and dig for that data. Try to prove everyone wrong by recovering information. Something else to consider is the file name containing the data could change. So Facebook, for example, if it was FB Sync Store, it could change to Facebook. So make sure you're not just memorizing files where the data is stored, and you check everything in that application directory. New files could be created for data storage, and honestly, accessing the data could be more difficult. But again, don't trust it. Try to prove it wrong. So just in case there is someone from CyberDust on the webcast again, I will tell you I did a webcast where I included this. It was called Mobile Device Security is Getting Stronger. Are your forensic methods getting weaker? And I did this last March 16th to be precise, and I'll tell you why. I remember this date here in a second. But the version of CyberDust that was out at that time was claimed to be 100% secure. Mark Cuban released statements saying that all user data is never stored to the hard drive. So we don't have hard drives on our phone, but clearly we'll forgive people for making statements like that because we know what he means. So what I expected is to not even see anything other than the fact that CyberDust was installed on the device. This just goes to show, do not trust the claims of your tool. So here we can see in CyberDust, we have a caches directory. In that caches, we have the cache database file, which was fully encrypted. So one false claim there, data is stored to your device, but it is encrypted. The write-ahead log and the shared memory file, however, were not encrypted. And this is why I was talking about where developers get sloppy, and it helps us forensically. So what we did, we looked at this write-ahead log in Notepad, and we found where it says encrypted message. We put that into a base 64 decoder, and the first time we put it in there, it was padded with the equal sign at the end, which anyone who knows base 64 knows that the equal sign at the end means that it's not divisible by 30, which it has to be. Put it in again, and we are able to decode all the messages that were in that write-ahead log. Now, this is one of the issues with webcasts. Someone from CyberDust contacted me that same day and said that I was wrong, that I was reporting false information, which I was not. I will stand by this evidence. Clearly, you can see the evidence right here. It's all out here for you. They claimed that it was secure, everything was encrypted. 2 days later, they did release a new version that I will tell you I did quickly scan it for them, and it is encrypted now, which is great for us as users, very unfortunate for us as forensic investigators. So one thing I will tell you, I will continue to use this example in webcasts because it's a good one of never trusting the apps, but I will not discuss new breakthroughs that we have on application forensics in a webcast just because it's hard for us as people who try to do this and help everyone else out to know who's sitting on the other side. This is covered in depth, though, in 585. So I will tell you, I had people from Facebook in my last class because they want to know what we can get. And then she was going back and telling them hey, we can get X, Y, and Z. Let's make it more secure. So for users, again, it's great. For forensic examiners, it's tough on us to actually report these things that then go back. So what do I recommend for you? How can you actually do this and get better at it? One, you really need to learn how data is stored on the Android and iOS devices. What you don't have to do is memorize it, because you can actually use your forensic tools to assist you in location paths. So if you understand that Android, right under the root directory, you'll find COM, Android provider, SMS, or whatever is stored there. Great. If you understand that you have to go into mobile library var on iOS, fantastic. That's what we kind of want you to understand. Also, how can you identify if an operating system has been upgraded? And the reason you care is because the old data is still there. You're going to have to go and dig this information out. We want you to learn how to decode and manually carve. So if you don't know how to do this, you are going to be at the mercy of your tool. And honestly, you're not going to get all the evidence because it's impossible for these commercial tools to keep up. In addition, if you take training with Cindy and I will guarantee you we will teach you ways to outsmart your tool, how to make your tool do things it was not intended to do to help you find all the evidence. Clearly, if you're interested in smartphones, take 585. I will tell you that if you do digital forensics, you will see a phone at some point. One of the biggest issues is most people who do digital forensics, it's just assumed that you know how to do phones. That's an issue. You need proper training on how to handle these devices because it's very, very easy to mess up the evidence. Anyone who has examined phones, I'm sure at some point you have trampled evidence accidentally. I have done it several times. I share those stories in class because nobody's perfect, but the best thing we can do is learn from our mistakes and learn how to get smarter. Some of the references. Clearly the course, I've taken some of the slides as glimpses of the course material here. So 585 Smartphone Forensics course. Practical Mobile Forensics, again, if you are just trying to break into mobile forensics, it's a great book for you to reference because it's going to teach you how to do forensics on your own device using free and open source methods. So if you don't have Celebrate or XRY, IEF, Oxygen, you can actually use the book to do things for free, essentially. And again, a second edition will be released at some point this year. My website is smarterforensics.com. I try to not only do smartphone forensic type blogging on my website, I do digital forensics in general, but clearly my passion is smartphones. So you're going to find more of the smartphone stuff there. What I also do is if I find a really cool blog, such as Mary's and Adrian's, which are the last two references listed here, I will reference their blogs often. Also, if I go to a presentation that I deem useful, I'll include that in the reading room, any papers that people release. So if you write something up that you are proud of and you think is pretty awesome in the realm of forensics, send it to me. If you send it to me and give me permission, I would love to host it on my website for others to enjoy and use. AndDriller.com. So Dennis from AndDriller, this is a fantastic tool. If you're law enforcement or military, it's free to you forever. He will always give you a free license. If you're not, I believe it costs about $300 US. So AndDriller will teach you and do this for you. I say teach you because it tells you actually the file paths where it's pulling everything from. It will help you unlock Android devices. It will help you decode database files from applications on Android and iOS devices. It does a little bit of Windows Phone, primarily just Chrome information and internet history, but it's a fantastic tool to get access to data. The Arizona Forensic blog, this is Mary DeGrazia's site, and what she does, she writes scripts to help people get access to data that is otherwise inaccessible. She has a script that goes through SQLite database files and pulls out items that could potentially be deleted. Some of you may say, you know what, that's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. If you looked at, let me go back a few slides here. If you go to back to this slide right here, if you looked at my call history database file, there were only 900 active calls. If you went into the deleted, you would have thousands. So in a situation like that, If you want to sit there and manually carve out the information, good for you, fantastic. Most people don't want to do that. She has a free script out on her site that you can actually get to parse this information. Adrian, the cheeky forensic monkey, he has done fantastic work for this community. Again, he writes a lot of scripts and a lot of solutions to get access to what he finds the commercial tools can't do. Adrian is really, really brilliant when it comes to Windows Phone. So he's passionate about this for several reasons. He has written a lot of parsers that will parse information from these devices. Both of these people, I will say, if you need a parser written, reach out to them. They'd be happy to do it as long as you give them test data. Some upcoming courses if you're interested in learning more. Munich, again in February, starting I think February 15th, right after Valentine's Day. Tyson's Corner in February with Cindy. I'm also teaching in Orlando, Washington, D.C., and then Cindy's teaching at the DFIR Summit in Austin, Texas. So if you're interested in doing that, we also offer the class on demand anytime you want. I'm sure there will be a V Live. It's not scheduled yet, but it's usually scheduled for the summer where you can learn in your PJs with a beer. Some people like that. There's also on-sites. So if you're interested just within your organization directly, I have done several of those. And what's really cool about that is, yes, you can invite others, but we can talk specifically to the level at which you are cleared or to your specific mission. I will tell you that SANS does hold clearances for several of us. I am one of them, so I'm able to teach in secure facilities. The one downside to that is I can't bring in phones and demo them, but we always make it work. So it's available if you need it. And if you're interested in doing any on-site type stuff, just shoot me an email and I can put you in touch with the right people. If you have questions and you're not comfortable asking them now, please email me, heather@smarterforensics.com. If for some reason you don't get a response, I would say within 2 days, email me at hmahalik@gmail.com, just first initial last name, because sometimes Smarter Forensics gets jammed up. I'm also on Twitter. You can reach me there. You can reach me directly through my website. And that is it. Does anyone have any questions? Is anyone on this webcast coming to the Munich class? Okay, so I will stand by for questions. I don't see anyone typing anything into the chat at this point. I hope you enjoyed the webcast. A copy of the slides and recording will be available later today once Carol posts it.
Hi, Heather. This is Carol. I do have some questions in the questions window. Would you like me to ask them of you?
Sure.
The first one is, does it matter who sends a message first after the original is deleted?
For the SMS recall, it would not matter. It would show up on both devices again.
Okay, and part of that is also, another part of the question is the original data still retrieved no matter who reinitiates a text message in iOS?
Yes.
Okay. And the next question is, if the iPhone is password protected and you don't know the password, can you even get into the phone to do all this stuff?
So that's a really good question. And that, it depends on the model of the device. The iOS version doesn't affect it. It's the model. So one, if it's jailbroken, try everything anyway. Do not trust what your tools claim because jailbroken devices do not count. The biggest issue, even if the device is jailbroken, is starting with the iPhone 6. The 64-bit operating system isn't supported by most of the forensic tools. The exception is Elcomsoft. Does a really good job at that. There are also other ways around it. Celebrate offers, I think it's $4,500 a phone though, just to warn you. It's the Advanced Investigative Services. You literally have to mail them your iPhone. They unlock it and send it back to you. I think they give cheaper law enforcement deals. But if it's prior to the iPhone 4S, if it's not even jailbroken, you can get into it even if it's passcode protected.
Okay, thank you. Here's another one. Let's see, they apologize if you already specified this, but what software are you using for smartphone forensics?
Carol, you're cutting out a little bit. I couldn't hear that one.
Okay, I'll repeat it. It says, Heather, I apologize if you already specified this, but what software are you using for smartphone forensics?
So I use a lot. For acquisition, I primarily use the UFED for PC and Blacklight, which is a black bag tool. A lot of people think that Blacklight only works on Macs, but it actually runs on Windows as well. For analysis, I use everything from IEF Mobile, which is super, super powerful, especially on iOS devices. It pulls a lot of information and does a really good job at not providing too many false positives. It also supports Android and Windows Phone. I use Oxygen Forensics, I use Physical Analyzer, and I use XRY often for analysis.
Okay, thank you. Also, if a person wipes or resets their iPhone to erase all content and settings, is all the forensic data you are discussing also completely eliminated from the device?
Yes, unless they have the old iPhone 3G. So one thing we teach in the class too, and we actually do this, our lab 18, which is the final lab before the forensic capstone, we give the students a white device and ask them to recover information, which is pretty cool because I'm not going to say which device we do that on just in case someone is sitting on the other side that's a developer for them and goes and fixes it. But with an iPhone, when you wipe the device, it gets rid of the master key, and the master key protects and tracks all the file keys. So truly, you're not overwriting all of your user data. It's just getting rid of the key and the main tracker that knows how to recover all those files. So all of your data is truly unrecoverable. Even the best forensic expert is not going to get anything from that device unless it's an iPhone 3G. So if you wanted to wipe your iPhone and sell it on eBay, you are secure at doing that. And I have definitely done that, and I'm very confident with that.
Okay, thank you. Do you cover Windows Phone forensics and BlackBerry too?
Yes, we do. And what we do with both of those is if you don't think a Windows Phone or a BlackBerry, the way the labs are designed is the BlackBerry lab is the first time we see encryption used on an SD card. So during that lab, we will teach you methods, one, for analyzing BlackBerry devices, which is a giant hassle. One of the hardest sections to teach and probably one of the more challenging labs, but we teach you encryption. So everything we teach you in that section would apply to any mobile device that has an SD card where encryption is on that SD card, or encrypted photos, videos, and it preps you for the smartphone challenge. With Windows Phone, we primarily teach Windows Phone 8. We have not branched into 10 yet, but we will. We do cover remnants of 7 in some of the older devices, but we teach you tricks and tips on how to acquire, how to analyze, and free parsers that are available to look at all that data.
Okay, thanks, Heather. This is the last one I see in the questions box. Oh, we just got another. Is there a basic smartphone forensics course or any prerequisites for the advanced course? Oh, and you know what, in addition to that, the next question that came in said, are there any prerequisites for 4585?
Okay, so there are no prerequisites. But one thing I always, if you look at the website, it says there are no prerequisites, but a basic understanding of forensics helps because we dive right in. I will tell you, if you have never done forensics, the class will move fast for you. If you take 408, sure, that will help you, but it's not going to help you do phones. It would help you with forensic concepts. One thing that I find that helps the students the most is if they've ever taken XRY or Celebrate class, and then they're like, okay, I know how to acquire phones. But it's perfect that you asked this because I am in the process of getting SANS to approve FOR 485, and it's going to be a 2-day intro course that teaches acquisition of smartphones. So you could take that class first before taking 585, but you don't have to. 585 in the appendix has how to acquire all the devices. Cindy and I often travel with multiple devices so that we can teach you and assist you on the side if you want to try to acquire phones. But usually the biggest issue for people is they're overwhelmed when they're like, I've never acquired a smartphone. I don't understand how smartphone data is stored, but we will get you there and make you successful in the 6 days that we have you in class. So really anyone can take it that wants to. Just know that if you are not experienced in forensics, it will move at a faster pace because it is an advanced course, but it's designed for everyone.
Okay, thank you. How long is old data available for forensics?
It depends on how frequently the user uses their device and the amount of space available for storage.
Okay, and someone would like to know, can those of us that attended 563 have access to your web portal?
Not for 563 because 585 is a completely different course. There is nothing that overlaps from 563 into 585, so you have to have taken 585 to get access to that password protected 585 section. I've had several students who take both 563. The next option for you, I would suggest taking 585 because 563 is essentially what is going to be revamped into 485.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. I didn't know if you had any additional questions that you see.
I do not. But thank you everyone for attending. I hope to see you in 585 at some point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Heather, for your great presentation and for bringing this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, you can visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.